I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the murder of a young dad named Jared Bridegan, who just dropped his twins off at his ex's house, a murder witnessed by a very young child. Here's the story. On the night of February 16, 2022, loving father Jared Bridegan was ambushed in a dimly lit Jacksonville Beach neighborhood after dropping off his twins. A tire mysteriously placed in the road forced him to stop. Seconds later, he was gunned down at close range in front of his terrified 2-year-old daughter. The hit appeared calculated, timed for maximum terror and devastation. Investigators tied the plot to Jared's bitter custody battle with his ex-wife, Shanna Gardner, alleging she orchestrated the murder with her current husband, Fernandez-Saldana, who recruited hitman Henry Tenon for a $150,000 fee. Tenon pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and is supposed to cooperate with prosecutors. In August of 2023, both Shanna and Mario were indicted on first-degree murder, conspiracy, solicitation of a capital felony, and child abuse charges. Prosecutors are seeking the death penalty against both defendants. Everything is at stake in this case. It's a death penalty case in Florida. Everything's lined up for next summer to take place. It's not going to be a quick trial. It's going to take some time. They're supposed to have 2 different juries involved here in one case. One trial, 2 juries, one for each of the 2 co-defendants. And the third co-defendant pleaded guilty, took a deal for second degree, was supposed to cooperate and be the star witness in the case. Let's bring in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. There have been some developments recently involving this co-defendant, Henry Tenon, the alleged hitman in all of this. And this could really shake up the case here.
Absolutely, Vinny. It's a development that we've been following for a little while now, and it's also a development that we are still awaiting to see what comes of it. Now, Henry Tenon, of course, we know is the gunman who pulled the trigger and actually killed Jared Bridegan back in 2022 when this shooting happened. Now, his connection to all of this, Tenon was renting a house from co-defendant Mario Fernandez-Saldana. That's his connection. Mario was his landlord in all of this. Now, Vinny, dating back to March 15th, 2023, after his arrest, that's when Tenon provided a sworn statement implicating Mario Fernandez-Saldana in the shooting. He pretty much, like you said, struck a plea deal where he pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and agreed to testify against Shanna Gardner and Mario Fernandez. Now, there was this status hearing, Vinny. This is where the development comes in. There was a status hearing for Tenon in January of 2025, and it wasn't until the next month, in February, when Fernandez's attorney filed a motion requesting discovery, that they learned in that hearing Tenon told the judge his testimony against Gardner and Fernandez was false. He pretty much lied under oath, Vinny, and this is a transcript of that hearing with his interaction with the judge. Now, he says, it starts off, Mr. Tenon says, quote, "Your Honor, may I say something?" The court, the judge says, "Talk to Mr. Chipperfield first." Mr. Chipperfield being Tenon's defense attorney. "Tell him what you want to tell me, okay?" Mr. Tenon replies, "I just want to bring to your attention that my testimony," judge replies, "No, no, no." Tenon says, "False testimony." The court goes, "Hold on." Mr. Chipperfield, the defense attorney, chimes in and says, "Mr. Tenon, we need to talk about that." Tenon says, "I need another attorney." Judge says, "Okay, let me pass it temporarily. Have a conversation with Mr. Chipperfield, and then I'll have a conversation with you, Mr. Tenon, okay?" Tenon replies, "Okay," and then he exits that courtroom, Vinny. And according to the document filed, Tenon never came back in that courtroom to address the court at all about this whatsoever. The case was postponed for months, and prosecutors were concerned that somebody had reached out to Tenon to influence him, surprising his attorney in court that day and essentially withdrawing his initial plea. But Tenon went on to deny any threats, deny any harassments, and deny any payments. So this was of his own accord, Vinny.
Yeah, this puts a wrinkle, perhaps a really bad wrinkle in the prosecution's case and the way we are going forward in all this. Cody Thomas is going to stay with us all night on this. So he's saying false testimony. Is this going to be another case like we just had in Las Vegas with Devin Michaels, who pleaded guilty, was at her sentencing, and then said, I'm innocent. And then everyone was like, whoa, 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 whoa. That's it. You're going to trial. We're going to pull the plea. This case is interesting because he's not only pleading guilty, but supposed to cooperate with prosecutors and be perhaps the star witness for them in putting all the pieces together. Which brings us to the first question in our investigation. And this is an important one for the trial of Shanna Gardner and her husband. If Henry Tenon withdraws his plea, can prosecutors win the case? And I'm talking about the case against the ex-wife, Shanna Gardner, the one who hired Jose Baez to defend her. Here to help answer this question, Florida attorney Brian Silver and Florida criminal defense attorney Michael Gottlieb. Great to have you both here. This is messy. This is really messy. I'm a former prosecutor. If I've got a cooperating witness who's the hitman, I want that testimony coming in clean. Now he's reneging. He's saying it's false testimony. What's going on here, Brian?
Well, good evening, Vinny. Good evening, Mr. Gottlieb. I hope everybody's doing great. I'm sure the prosecutors are not having that good of an evening. You don't want to hear that one of your star witnesses is throwing around the words false in testimony, and there's discussion about withdrawing a plea, because if he does that, that means all bets are off and they lose a very important witness. I don't think it necessarily means that their case is over. There's a lot of other very strong circumstantial evidence, such as the connection that these two defendants have to this gentleman. But it definitely throws a monkey wrench in the situation. And let's face it, she is represented by a very capable lawyer who absolutely will delve very deeply on this subject.
Yeah, very deeply. Michael, here's the way I'm looking at this. Like, to prove this case, right? Because Henry Tenon is the one, like he's the gunman. He is the one who actually takes the life of Jared Bridegan. But you've got to connect him all the way to Shanna Gardner, because everyone's looking at this case and saying, okay, Shanna Gardner's the mother of the children. She's the ex-wife. Like, she's like the one potentially, according to prosecutors, pulling the strings here. But if Tenon's not going to admit it and connect himself at least to her husband, now you've got to prove all of that. Can they, though? Can they make the connection all the way back to Shanna?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on, Vinny. Hey, Brian, how are you? Of course, I think they can make that connection. There's a couple ways in which you do that. There's a paper trail. There's money. There's a connection as a renter to Fernandez-Saldana and Mr. Tenon. Plus, Mr. Tenon, even though he's claiming now that he gave false testimony, he already gave testimony. So you can use that prior testimony to impeach him. Maybe he's got buyer's remorse. He's sitting in jail for 15 years. Maybe somebody did get to him. He pled guilty to murder too. There's other evidence as well. His truck was found at or seen at or near the scene. The tire that was placed in the roadway matches a tire that was found at Fernandez-Saldana's residence. So, and then there's a connection between Shanna Gardner. She was in a very difficult divorce situation. She has a motive. That's a beautiful thing for a prosecutor, something they never need to prove, but they have in this case. And so when you can tie all three of them together, even without Tenon's statements, I think the prosecution can easily get a guilty verdict in this case.
Well, I don't think anything's easy when Baez is on the other side. He has a way, especially with Florida juries, right? So Brian, what does it do to the case now? Right now, there's two defendants. If he withdraws his plea, do we now put three defendants on trial at once? Do we have separate trials for him and for the other two? Does that change the dynamic of the way this is going to look in front of the juries? We already have two juries. Are we going to put a third jury inside the courtroom?
So, first of all, I don't think it's such a foregone conclusion that he's going to withdraw his plea, because it's not up to him. It's going to be up to his judge. And when a person pleads guilty to a charge in criminal court, and anybody who's ever actually observed the process, you know that judge goes through a whole slew of questions to make sure that the person knows what they're doing. They're aware of the consequences. I mean, they even ask them, things like, have you used any medications that might impair your judgment today? So for him to get past the hurdle of reopening his case, it's not automatic. It's going to be difficult. But the fallout to the prosecutors, they definitely are going to have to reevaluate how they go about things, because now instead of him being a friendly force in their case, he's now an enemy. He's now someone that they need to battle with. It's just another hurdle. And frankly, I don't know how wise it is for this gentleman to trade a murder 2 conviction for murder 1, where the state is seeking the death penalty. He might be making a very, very big mistake. Guilty or innocent, he might be putting himself on the chopping block. I hate to say it. I don't know how wise of a decision it would be for him to reopen his case, because if he reopens his case, he's back to square zero. He's now in the crosshairs. But the prosecutors will definitely have to take it from square one. But the way I see it is as follows. They arrested him and charged him with the crime because they thought they could win. It's just going to mean more work for them. I don't know that it necessarily translates into a weaker case.
Let me ask you this, Michael. What happens if he doesn't withdraw, but testifies, gets called by the state, and all of a sudden he's telling a different story on the witness stand? Can prosecutors overcome that?
It certainly wouldn't be the first time that's happened. It wouldn't be the first time that's happened, right? But he's already given a statement under oath. So again, a good prosecutor is going to go through that statement line by line and say, you were telling the truth when you gave that statement. And they'll go through the evidence of the crime scene. There are things that he's been able to say that only he, as the shooter, would know. Where he shot from, how he placed the tire in the roadway.
Well, I think the story's going to change, though, relative to the involvement of the other two. Like that's where I think the change is going to be. He may not change his testimony about actually pulling the trigger, but he may suddenly say, well, Shanna didn't know anything. It was just Mario or something like that.
Right, and that's incredibly plausible, and I think Shanna's probably the easiest one, to exculpate in a case like this, because she doesn't have the same connections that Saldana-Fernandez does, or Fernandez-Saldana does, and the money transfers aren't from Shanna; they're from Fernandez-Saldana to Tenon, and he had a relationship there. So she's certainly the easiest person for him to say, look, she had nothing to do with this, and she may walk. Anything's possible.
Well, that brings us
interesting.
Yeah. All right, guests are staying with us. Coming up next, this is exactly what we're going to talk about. I mentioned Jose Baez is representing Shanna, right? Is this case easier to defend than that woman from Orange County?
We are here for arraignment in Shanna Gardner's case.
We would enter a plea of not guilty and amend discovery at this time.
All right.
Mama tried. Now my daddy's crying because I'm in here.
You are the common denominator that led to JD and Big Doug shooting each other in the dark of night.
All right, help party, I'm dying.
Don't you have the blood of both these men on your hands?
I felt guilty for that.
You felt guilty because, frankly, you were guilty.
Interview with a Killer. New episode Saturday night at 8 Eastern and Pacific. Only on Court TV.
They want you to follow the money, Your Honor. But they want you to follow their path to the money, which clearly is false and absolutely misleading and has no place before this court.
High-profile attorney Jose Baez representing Shanna Gardner. She comes from a lot of money. The family has money to pay him to bring him into the case. And yeah, we all remember what he did. He did what many believed was the impossible down in Central Florida years ago, before I started dyeing my hair silver. Take a look. Jose Baez down in Orange County.
When you go back home and you're back in Clearwater, and you're sitting around the dinner table, and someone says to you, Why did you find Casey Anthony not guilty? You're going to say, well, I was fed a wealth of information, like a V. All this information came, but it all boiled down to one thing. They couldn't tell me how she died.
It's the defense's position and theory of the case that this was an accident. This is a detective currently investigating a missing persons case, but yet he considers it akin to a murder investigation without a body.
What information, Mr. Baez, of record evidence that would be introduced that shows this was an accident?
The fact that Mrs. Anthony had informed him within 24 hours of him being involved in the case that they had accidentally, or that she had noticed that the ladder was left up on the pool. There are also multiple statements from both George and Cindy Anthony where they have clearly advised this officer that, in their opinion, this could have been an accident that was covered up, and that accident would have centered around the pool of this case.
When everything is said and done, the one question will never be answered. The key question in this case will never be answered. It can never be proven. And that is, how did Kaylee die? They're hoping they throw enough against the wall and see what sticks. That's what they're doing here. Let's throw it all against the wall and see what sticks. I'm not proud of the way Casey behaved. I don't think anybody here can justify her actions, but they do not constitute murder.
As to the charge of first-degree murder, verdict as to count 1, we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty.
She didn't report her daughter missing for 30 days. She lied about everything. Her 12 people testified about the smell of death coming from the trunk of her car. The body was discarded. There was duct tape over her mouth and in her hair. And he said it was an accident. Like, there was no evidence of an accident. Didn't matter. Jury found her not guilty. That brings us to the next question in our investigation. Is this case easier to defend than Casey Anthony? I said it. Sorry, but I did. Is it easier? She didn't pull the trigger. Henry Tenon did. Here to help with our investigation, still with us, Brian Silver and Michael Gottlieb. Michael, is this one easier?
It's a very different case. So in Casey Anthony, she lied over and over and over again. But the medical examiner couldn't put a date or a time on the death. And there was virtually no direct evidence. There was some circumstantial evidence.
There was duct tape on a dead baby. There was duct tape on a dead baby.
Right, but duct tape doesn't tell you who put it there. There was no.
Right, but they said it was an accident.
There was no fingerprint.
The defense said exactly what happened. Like, they said that it was an accidental drowning.
The jury might not buy that, but they still have to believe beyond a reasonable doubt that Casey Anthony was guilty of murdering her old child, and the state didn't have that evidence there. The child was dead. It was a horrific scene. The entire state, the entire country was talking about it. She was guilty in the court of public opinion. But jurors take an oath, and they follow that oath. And that oath is to hold the state to a burden of proving their case beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. And there was reasonable doubt in that case that she was the party that was guilty of murdering her own child. So I think this case is much harder, because if Tenon sticks to his guns, to his original statement, you've got a guy who says, I was there, who says he killed, who talks about the motive, talks about the plan, talks about the relationship. So I think Tenon is a much more difficult defense case.
Brian, what do you think? Is this case easier or more difficult?
I got to take Mr. Gottlieb's side on this one, Vinny. I got to tell you, the thing with Casey Anthony is as follows, all right? The duct tape, you're right, it's glaring evidence, and it's something that resonates with homicide. But the truth is, it's also used to dispose of bodies. It doesn't speak to the cause of death. All it speaks to is someone is trying to hide something. But the big question is, what are they trying to hide? Are they trying to hide child neglect that resulted in a death? Or are they trying to hide a premeditated murder? You know, those are two very different things, and that was the big question. And here's the
But she was found not
issue,
guilty of all of them.
I understand that, and that was the right verdict because the prosecution had a lack of evidence. The medical examiner couldn't even tell that jury how the baby died. You know, and by the way, let's not mistake the horror of that case with the verdict, okay? When prosecutors ask for a murder conviction and the death penalty, it's the ultimate ask, okay? They're asking for the biggest thing possible.
A lot of lesser included there,
issue.
though. There was a whole list of lesser includeds that the jury could have landed on.
Yes, but they couldn't. This is the problem. Even the lesser includeds are some very serious offenses. And before a jury's going to feel comfortable sending someone to a cage for the rest of their life or to go get a needle in their arm, the prosecution has to live up to their case.
I have another question.
They gotta pay with evidence.
Yeah. All right. Michael Gottlieb, is this case easier than the Aaron Hernandez case? He was representing a convicted murderer in another murder case.
Yeah, so, you know, that one's difficult. You had individuals who testified against Hernandez, but they were gang types, not really credible, not really believable. Hernandez had this thing about him, you know, you were drawn to him. He you know, I still think that this one is more difficult.
More difficult?
Given, yeah, it's a more difficult case to defend than Hernandez.
All right. Michael Gottlieb, Brian Silver, two great attorneys down in Florida. They know those juries down there. Thank you so much. All right, still to come. Why would you ever want your children's other parent dead? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the murder of Jared Bridegan, a young father raising his family with his new wife years after starting a family with his first wife. Now that first wife is charged with his murder. Here's the story. Shanna Gardner was born into Utah privilege. The daughter of Shelley and Sterling Gardner, co-founders of the very successful craft company Stampin' Up. Her lavish trust income funded a luxurious lifestyle and included a monthly stipend. But beneath the glamour, a darker story unfolded. In 2022, Shanna's ex, Jared Bridegan, was ambushed and executed in Jacksonville Beach after stepping out of his SUV to move a tire in the road. His 2-year-old child watched from the back seat. Prosecutors allege Shanna helped orchestrate the plot, allegedly texting as far back as 2015 that she wanted Jared gone and soliciting a hitman via her then-husband, Mario Fernandez-Saldana, for $150,000. Now charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy, solicitation to commit a capital felony, and child abuse, which carry the death penalty, Gardner vehemently denies the charges. Death penalty case, a battle for years between these exes about raising those children. Let's bring in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas to help us better understand this case, and let's get to the why of it. Cody, what is the alleged motive here?
Well, Vinny, like plenty of cases that we see here at Court TV, prosecutors say the motive had to do with a bitter legal custody battle after a nasty divorce over the two children, the twin children that Bridegan and Gardner shared together. Now, these two were married for 5 years before Gardner filed for divorce in 2015. Of course, Bridegan went on, got him a new family, got married, had 2 new kids with his new wife. Gardner went on to marry her now co-defendant, Mario Fernandez-Saldana. But in the midst of all this, Shanna wanted full custody of the twins that she shared with Bridegan, which started this whole legal battle here. And Vinny, this is where the kicker comes in. According to some local reporting, their court file over the course of all this contains around 300 different entries and motions. 300 Vinnie. So she was really going at it. I mean, she's represented by Jose Baez, so I mean, they're taking it all the way. Gardner accused Bridegan of having this abusive behavior. He accused her of spying on him and treating him bad in front of the kids. It's just not a good situation, Vinnie. But in a hearing, Gardner's attorney, Jose Baez, of course, is heard questioning a detective with the Jacksonville Beach Police Department about Shanna's state of mind. Take a listen to this.
All the witnesses who told you about these alleged statements made by Ms. Gardner were referring back to 2015 up to 17, correct?
That's correct.
So, fair to say, too, that that was when the tension between Ms. Gardner and Mr. Bridegan were at its peak, correct?
I can't speak to her state of mind.
But based on what you saw from the text messages, from the investigation, from all the people you talked to, it was pretty bad early on, right?
I would assume that would be true, but I would also argue that there are sprinkles of comments made throughout the entire time period that would indicate that she had issue with sharing custody with Mr. Bridegan, or that there were things that she would be frustrated over.
And Vinnie, we've also heard from Bridegan's brother Adam and his wife after Shanna, a woman named Kirsten Bridegan, about the state of the relationship between Bridegan and Shanna and their relationship and their divorce. Take a listen to this.
What I can say is that Jared was broken, right? He really wanted to stay together for the kids. I think that was his top priority, was raising the children. And the divorce really took an emotional toll on him. And we were so happy as a family to see Kirsten come into Jared's life.
The relationship between us and his ex-wife was not cordial. Our communications were always in writing because there was not mutual trust between the two households. Unfortunately, are kind of stuck in the middle of that. Jared and I tried so hard not to involve them, not to use them as messengers, not to talk poorly about their mother in front of them. And unfortunately, that favor was not returned. And that was really hard on Jared. He sent so many messages just pleading, like, leave the kids out of it, because his priority was his kids, and that is what mattered to him.
So, Vinnie, based on that testimony from the man with the Jacksonville Police Department, Bridegan's brother, Bridegan's wife at the time of his death, there's no doubt that things were rocky between Jared and Shanna.
Absolutely, and it continued over the course of so many years. It wasn't just like, oh, we're getting divorced. It was like, we're getting divorced, and then constantly filing motion, hundreds of motions. Thanks so much, Cody. So I get it, and I understand things get bitter. You may even talk badly, right? There are allegations of that, and you don't get along. You do everything in writing. But let's get to my next question in my investigation, because this is next level, right? This is the next level. This is what I don't understand. Why would you ever want your children's other parent dead? Because at that point, you're not just being vengeful against your ex. You are punishing your children. You're taking out, whether it's the mother or the father, you're taking out one of their parents. They're not going to grow up with one less parent. Why would you ever do that? All right, here to help us answer that question, author, clinical forensic neuropsychologist, Dr. Judy Ho, and Sharonda Brown, author and nationally certified mental health clinician who specializes in trauma, child abuse, and neglect. Thank you both. And this reminds me, right? I was thinking, the Adelsons. The Adelson case was a custody case as well. Another case involving the hiring, or the alleged hiring in this case, but in that case, they hired a hitman. They hired two hitmen to take out Dan. Wendy hasn't been charged. We know that. But you're having your nephews or your grandchildren grow up without a parent. Why would it ever get to this, Dr. Judy Ho? Like, because you're not punishing your ex. You're punishing your own children. You're damaging your own children. Why would anyone do that?
It's a really good point, Vinny. And I don't think that clearly in these situations, people are thinking solely about their children or even primarily about their children. Their need for revenge or to take something out on their ex is so huge that they've just gone way over the top, and they're not even thinking about the fact that they are traumatizing their children for life, right? What was the best case scenario? And I understand that these are just allegations at this moment, but what was the best case scenario if this was actually the plot? Best case scenario is your children lose a parent. And we know the extremely negative and deleterious effects of that on children and their attachment development. But worst case scenario is kind of what's unfolding right now, Vinny, where you've lost one parent and the other parent is now embroiled in this huge legal battle. They may potentially lose their life because a death penalty is on the table. And now your children may be orphans? I mean, clearly they were not thinking this through, Vinny.
Sharonda Brown, you talk about, there's two things. There's something else that Jared Bridegan and Dan Markell have in common. These were two guys who wanted to be there for their children. And that's what children want. They want a dad. Obviously, they want the mom, but they want a dad also to be in their lives. What does it do, Sharonda, when a child loses a parent? They've gone through a divorce and now they lose a father or they lose a mother.
It's really hard on the kids in general. And when you have cases like this, usually co-parenting is difficult when you have at least one selfish parent who wants it all their way. So you usually have a safe parent where they have normal traditions, and then you have maybe an unsafe, maybe unorthodox parent where things are a little chaotic. And typically the household that's more chaotic usually wants to get rid of the household that's a little more peaceful and structured. And when one of the parents is gone, typically those kids lose the safer parent. They lose the parent who wants more structure and organization. So when that interferes with the chaotic household, it becomes a threat to that chaotic household. So you want to get rid of the other parent because they are disrupting your lack of organization and the way you like to do things. So there's an extra set of eyes on you who wants to make sure that the kids get to bed on time or that no one's cursing in front of them, no one's mistreating them. So they become a disruption at some point. And so now, because they're in the way, they have to go. And so these kids lose out on that safety. They lose out on the routine. They lose out on the structure. And it really takes a toll on them for their entire lives for the most part, because they're fighting for that structure and organization and that safety. So I definitely believe it's going to have a huge impact on them, especially if the safe parent is no longer there.
And Dr. Judy Ho, the other thing is there's so many parents, and let's look at it, in this scenario, moms, right? There's a divorce, dad meets another woman, starts another family, and then all of a sudden kind of forgets about his kids from his first marriage, right? And that, a lot of scenarios, and I know people, those mothers get so angry because they see what it's doing to their children to not have dad there. And then this is the opposite of that. This is a dad who wanted to be there despite the fact that he started another family. He was blending everyone together. I don't understand how you could look at that and see, okay, it's working. Yeah, there's another family, but dad is still in our children's lives. Why would you not want that?
Right. Well, when you're a decent parent, then you can have your personal feelings. You may even be a little jealous that your ex seems to be living his best life without you, carrying on with his new wife, and also some younger children that are not birthed by you, but yet people seem to be getting along, and you're saying, I will put my personal feelings aside and just tolerate this and deal with it the best that I can. Nobody's saying that you have to be happy about such a situation. Divorces are hard and people have really deep feelings about it. But this is just clearly a person who, if she actually did what has been alleged, is someone who says, well, you know what? I can't stand the fact that my ex is so happy. I can't stand the fact that my children love my ex. Maybe they even prefer him, to Ms. Brown's point, and bringing those feelings and essentially as a parent not being able to take a step back and saying, well, what is best for the children? Even if I have my own issues with it. she's basically letting herself get carried away with her hatred, her feelings, her inability to see her ex happy, and her inability to tolerate her children being happy with her ex.
All right, big thanks to Sharonda Brown. Dr. Judy Ho is going to stick around. Coming up next, how much difference will Shanna Gardner's family's millions make?
I'm here, Shanna. I'm outside. Oh, they're going to call you.
A former porn actor caught in a deadly father-son love triangle.
I'm not going to stop fighting to prove my innocence.
The Love Triangle beheading trial. Live coverage weekday mornings 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Sunday nights on Court TV. Join us for a night of food, friends, and our favorite legal dramas. It's Order in the Court. And this week, we're binge watching Bull. Sundays on Court TV.
What direction does this conversation take?
It's essentially just more about ways that Ms. Gardner is unhappy with Mr. Bridegan, that she would like for him no longer to be alive, stating, hey, Shanna needs a guy who does permanent disappearing acts. And she says that she needs a magician for stupid, referring to Mr. Bridegan.
Some incriminating text messages. You know, looking for a hitman, and he ends up getting killed by a hitman. But that doesn't mean that this case is going to be easy by any means. You've got 3 defendants, you've got some connections, some potential connections, and we'll see how it all plays out. But let's check back in with Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas, because another one of the factors, from my perspective, is the family, Shanna Gardner's family, and who she, what she comes from. Like, she doesn't just like pop up. Like, she's had a nice life up until this point.
Well, yeah, Vinny, you know, she comes from a pretty wealthy family. They're pretty well-to-do because they co-founded her parents, this company called Stampin' Up. Pretty successful company. Now, they sell arts and crafts and other items that are particularly popular in the Mormon community. We also have a photo of Gardner's mother and her sister as well from the Stampin' Up website. You see them sitting there. And of course, in this company, Vinny, they have hundreds of people that participate in their company's marketing model, if you will. But Vinny, let's take a look at the body cam video from the day of Shanna Gardner's arrest, where we see her mother towards the beginning talking to police before Shanna is brought out of the house in handcuffs. Let's take a look.
Can I be with the kids, or can you at least bring the kids out to me?
Yeah, we'll have to talk to these officers inside, okay?
We have to be.
Marla, my neighbor, has temporary.
I'm here, Shanna. I'm outside.
Oh, they're gonna call you.
You want some shoes? Oh, yeah, probably.
Can I?
There's some shoes. You want me to go get her shoes?
I'll get her shoes.
There's two shoes for her.
It's gonna be the white vehicle back there. We'll go to the passenger side. Yep.
Best off.
I do have a question for you. It's not regards to the charges at all. Those, the medication that's in that little divider,
Yeah.
What's in those?
I can tell you.
Just the reason I asked is because the jail might not take that divider.
That's fine.
I don't
have
know.
enough in the bottles.
Okay.
I think there was only a day left, is what my mom said.
Okay, and if you have them in the bottles, then that's good. I just saw that in there, and the jail is pretty picky on prescriptions.
Yeah, now I figured the divider my mom can come and get,
So, Vinnie, after all that, we see her sitting in the back of that cop car. We now wait for her trial to begin in August of 2026.
Cody Thomas, thanks so much. Millions and millions and millions of dollars the families were. You saw the beautiful neighborhood. Next question in our investigation. It's about the money. How much difference will Shanna Gardner's family's millions make here? Here to help with our investigation, author, clinical forensic neuropsychologist, Dr. Judy Ho. Also joining us, former state attorney, Palm Beach County, Florida, Dave Arenberg. Unfortunately, we don't have a ton of time, so let's get right to it. Dave, how much of a difference does the money make here?
It matters, Vinny. It won't change the facts of the case or the law, but it definitely changes the trajectory and the quality of the defense. You got Jose Baez of Casey Anthony fame on her team, and so they're going to get the best experts money can buy. They'll scrutinize every bit of evidence from the state. They're going to make life miserable for the prosecutors, bury them in paperwork. And so, yeah, it does matter, and it helps their certainty or their chances of winning. But in the end, the evidence is the evidence, and I trust the jurors to get it right.
Let me ask you, Dr. Judy Ho, from Shanna Gardner's perspective, growing up with privilege, growing up, you know, everything's taken care of, and now all of a sudden you're locked up, you're facing a potential death penalty. What are your thoughts about that juxtaposition?
Well, that's quite a culture shock, Vinny. I don't think that she probably ever believed that it would come to this day. And I think that she's still hoping that the best is going to occur and that she's not going to have to go to prison for this or face the death penalty.
Yeah, end up on death row. Dave Arenberg, we have about a minute left here. Looking at this case, what do you think is going to be the key here? You've prosecuted so many big cases down there in Florida, your office. What are your thoughts about the keys to this case?
The credibility of the hitman. They're going to try to put him on trial. The defense is going to make him into the bad guy. He was somehow out on his own, but it'd be impossible for jurors to ignore the fact you got this guy who had no tie to the victim, and yet he's getting paid $150,000 for what? For Kickstarter campaigns, for landscaping? Doesn't make any sense. This is exactly what is obvious to the rest of us. This is a murder for hire. Doesn't matter how rich you are, there's still justice in the end.
All right. Dr. Judy Ho, how about for the parents? We have about 20 seconds here. You raise your daughter, you know, and she ends up in this position?
That's right. And I can't imagine what the parents are thinking right now. I think that sometimes there's a sense of disbelief. I think that there's still a belief that perhaps this is not really the person that you raised. It's really hard to reconcile that. There's a big cognitive dissonance here, I think, on behalf of the parents.
Big thank you. Dr. Judy Ho, Dave Arenberg, always great to have you here. I know your time's valuable, and we really do appreciate it. These cases are tough. When a parent is accused of murdering another parent, that's because of the absolute devastation to the children. And in the case of Jared Bridegan, this is even more devastating because he started a new family. So now you've doubled the devastation. 2 sets of children who will no longer have their dad there. I'll never understand how a parent could be so selfish and so spiteful. We'll see if the jury agrees. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.